they are living proof that heavy metal music is alive and well in America.
Got a new album about to be
Hard rock recorders through radio stations.
just enjoyed being themselves.
We've been working for the past 4 weeks.
James Hetfield, rhythm guitar, vocals. Lars, I play drums. Kurt had the guitar. Flip the bass.
The new, the heavy, good heavy metal.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
It's different, it's great.
Their music isn't like garbage, you know? They know how to get the crowd going. It's music.
They're just like us. They party, everything. They turn it up. They crank up the volume.
You see, there's only one thrash band around that I know of, and that's Metallica. In the United States of America!
In late '81, there was a classified ads newspaper in the greater LA area called The Recycler. And I put an ad in there for a drummer looking for other musicians to start a band. And I put a couple of sort of obscure new wave of British heavy metal bands in there, like Tigers Pantang and Diamond Head. And long story short, so a guy named Hugh Tanner showed up one day and he said, "Can I bring a friend of mine along?" And his name was James Hetfield. And then we started playing gigs within a few months. And you're figuring it out as you're going along. And it was just literally like, let's start a band so we can have some fun and play the kind of music that we like and hang out and sweat a little bit and do our thing.
When we got together, we were four angry young men. And, you know, what brought us together was the way we played, with anger, with aggression, distortion, energy, rawness. We found each other and we saw in each other a similar anger. And that's why we came together.
Wow, we're all here and everything.
All right.
At that point in our life, a lot of stuff was happening. A lot. As far as I was concerned, I was just having a good time. And
We're out of beer, pal.
We really didn't have much time to really separate ourselves or distance ourselves from everything that was happening. Because I think it was a pretty collective thing that we were thinking, we gotta go back out there, make a new album, and get on a tour.
Being on the road is where it's safe. Being on the road is where you don't have to deal with all the issues of not really having a proper place to live or whatever. It's like, let's just write songs, make a record, get back out on the road where you can sort of detach from reality.
We don't expect anything. We just go out and do what we do and hope people like it and try and please ourselves artistically. And we don't sit back and say, oh, I hope we're big next year, or I hope this, I hope that. We just go and do it and don't put a lot of thought into what might happen or what could happen. We just think about what's happening now.
Me and James had been sharing a house together in San Francisco for about 3 years, where we had the garage sort of converted into a sort of rehearsal studio type thing. And since we live together and all that, it's easier for us to write when we feel like it, instead of saying, okay, well, we write at Monday at 2 o'clock, you know, and when every one of us would get an idea, we could just take it out in the studio right away and work on it when it felt like it was time to work on something, and he comes up with most of the guitar riffs, and I come up with a lot of the main ideas for the songs, the arrangements and so forth, and me and him sort of get the skeletons of the songs together, and we have tapes of the other two guys' main riffs and main ideas, and if we need like a new riff or anything like that, we might go listen to one of the other guys' tapes. And then when we have like the basis for a whole song, we then have the other guys come over one at a time, go through it with them, and see if there's any changes or anything they want to add or whatever, and then just sort of that's how the songs come about.
Back then, it was super easy to just start writing a song. We didn't specifically write the album in one place. It kind of came together, whether it was riffs from touring with Tank or Venom on Ride the Lightning, or at home, or wherever we were.
I remember in our little garage there in El Cerrito, playing all the tunes and just getting a lump in my throat. And when I get a lump in my throat when I'm playing music or listening to music, I gather that's moving me on a subconscious level, and I just went with it.
We're not really concerned about, appealing to a select group of people or anything, We just want to do what we're going to do. If people are into it, that's great. But we're basically in it to please ourselves.
It doesn't matter if we sell, 10 albums or 1 million albums if we're artistically satisfied. I think the main thing that counts is that if we like it, that's what matters.
All of us listen a lot to other bands, and we're very aware of what other bands are doing and what goes on around us and what this band is doing with their music. And I think one thing that we learned from that, we learned what not to do. That's probably one of the things with this band. We've always been very careful to sort of avoid a lot of the cliches and a lot of things that we see around us in heavy metal that we don't like.
If you came here to see fucking spandex and fucking makeup and hairspray and all this crap, this ain't the fucking band!
For Metallica, making records is very much a practical undertaking. What we do is we'll have this riff and another riff, and those two will live together, and then over here will be this riff and 2 other riffs, and then over here something else will live, and it's all these different things that we sort of continuously visit. So what becomes Battery is the fast song.
Backing up the action, returning the reaction, we go with the board away. Synthesizing powers, pressing all the towers, Battery is here to stay. Pressing through the boundaries, losing its boundary, can't let the back away.
Over the course of 3 months, we'll go and work on Battery once a week. And every time we go back to it, we hopefully take it to another level or hone it or get it more dialed or whatever until they become songs, and it's like where you don't feel that you can better them anymore. And then either they're so good they go on the record or they go in the trash bin.
What we originally wanted to do was record in the States. We're not too keen on recording at home because there'd be a lot of distractions, from friends, and it's good to get away so you can concentrate a bit more on that. But we thought LA would be good because everyone would just be, 50 minutes away from home and so forth. So what happened was we started talking producers. So the first name that was kicked around was someone named Geddy Lee, who plays bass in Rush. Basically what happened was there was a sort of conflict schedule, as they say, which meant that he basically couldn't do it because of his commitments with Rush. It just slowly started thinking about that it would be better maybe just to approach it ourselves anyway, like we did last time. And we came to the conclusion that we were very, very keen on working with Fleming.
When people come to me, they have to be at their peak. They have to be on their best game in order to perform these songs and do it the way they want it. We'd done Ride the Lightning together, so we knew each other. We didn't have that kind of get to know and feel and how we worked in a working situation. We just sat down and, did the sound, started working.
So what we did was we invited Fleming to come over to LA, and we sort of took a tour of the most happening studios in LA that the record company had set up. There was one studio that we were interested in recording in, which we thought had, the good atmosphere we were looking for in the sort of rooms and facilities. But that was booked up until the middle of 1986, so scratch that.
At some point, it became about economics. At that time, our headspaces were the more studio time, the better it's going to sound. And then somebody said, well, wait a minute. If you go back to Denmark, then you can get 3 times as much studio time for the same price that if you recorded in LA. And it was like, wait a minute, we'd rather have 120 days in Denmark than 40 in LA.
Basically, we knew that that place had what we needed as far as gear, as far as the way the studio was set up, It was a sure thing that we could get the sounds we needed. And we didn't really want to take a chance on losing the sound that we had developed on Ride the Lightning. We knew if we went back to Sweet Silence, we could develop it even further.
What we did on this album was that we, before we started recording our own 8 songs, we did 2 cover songs to find out what sounds we were getting. We've had a lot more time here to work with sounds, which means we get better sounds, which in our case, better means heavier.
Basically what we did was we did what people now do in Pro Tools. We did that on analog tape, and all the albums we did together were all done on analog tape. I think we wanted everything to be tighter and more focused. We did a lot of guitar sound experimenting as well.
I think I found out that in the recording of those 2 cover songs, how I should play the drums on the other song, which is I'm playing a lot more aggressively. So I think all of us are playing more aggressively, that we learn to try and get the same aggressions and the same energy that we create on stage. I think we've learned how to create them in the studio, even though each of us are only playing by themselves and there's not, 3,000 people going crazy in front of you.
I think we all had the same perspective of where we want it to end. It should be kind of like Ride the Lightning, just 3 times better in writing and playing and performing and sound and everything. It was just work to get a level higher.
The opening track, Battery, was, like the first thing that we approached because the riffs and sort of the idea for the next fast song was there. It's like Fight Fire was, at the time of Ride the Lightning, pretty much the ultimate thrash song in terms of the playing and songwriting. I think Battery is like one step beyond that. It's just a lot of energy and a lot of aggressions, but at the same time there's like the odd melody thrown in on the guitar.
When I hear that opening, it's the very first few notes of the opening of the album. Something clicks in me inside, and I just know, okay, get ready for 65, 70 minutes of like total heavy metal mayhem.
Battery, obviously, Battery Street. That was where a lot of our life was lived. It just felt like a home for us. We're out on tour and then we come home. This is where we get our energy.
You know, if you go and see a heavy metal show, you know, a good thrash band or something, there's that kind of a situation set up to see when you read the lyrics that, you know, you get people on stage creating this sound, creating this energy, and the audience taking that and producing this kind of whirlwind on the floor, which is kind of like a battery, just people flailing around, throwing their bodies into the air, and generally, you know, doing as much harm to each other.
I think it's about, you know, the perfect opener. Plus, I think it's part about the ultimate and sort of, you know, whatever you want to call it, thrash or speed, because I think it's got all the ingredients that you want to put into a song like that.
You know, there's aggression in the lyrics. That's kind of how we were and how we live. And I know it is that way for a lot of other people, too. There are two kinds of people who listen to music. One, you know, turns on the radio and it's kind of background stuff, and other people who really live by it. And I think most of Metallica people out there really kind of live or take to heart a lot of this stuff.
Master Puppets seemed like an early contender for title track. Basically, in a nutshell, the song is about manipulation and about sort of pulling other people's strings and all that kind of super crazy stuff.
Lyrically, it applies to so many things in life. You know, being manipulated by many, many things if you want to let yourself go there. It wasn't just drugs. And I think that's kind of a sign of a good song, where it applies years later.
The difference between when we came into recording Ride the Lightning and now, I mean, it's like everyone really has learned a lot. And I think the songs are maybe a bit more musical than they were before, because I think we can play our instruments a bit better. For instance, Master Puppets has a part in the middle. Then it slows down and sort of, you know, builds up, and there's a lot of different moods. I think we'd have a lot of problems if we had songs that were that long that didn't work. And it's interesting too, because on the last album, when we came in the studio, a lot of the songs were a lot longer than they actually are on the album. There was a lot of cuts made in the song where we said, well, let's take this part out. But on this album, so far there's not been one cut made. It doesn't matter how long the song is. If the song flows when you listen to it, it could be, you know, 6 minutes or 12 minutes. I mean, these are just numbers that, you know, printed on record sleeves. I think that we've succeeded on writing songs that sort of work through the whole song.
The only limits that we have on this band are the limits that we put on ourselves, and we try not to limit ourselves.
We've always done things our way and had the you attitude, you know. When you start worrying about what you're writing about, you start compromising your true feelings, really, or your creativity. You've got to write what you feel.
Well, I think the thing that makes a song like this one work is the overall feel. It's a basic sort of rock and roll thing that just really moves and grooves.
When we wrote Master of Puppets, we felt we were one song short of a full record, and I guess ultimately when we sat down with the songs that we had, we felt that there was a slower, heavier, grindier kind of song that would balance the overall record out. So we wrote The Thing That Should Not Be in the studio.
You know, Thing That Should Not Be, Lovecraft for sure. It's kind of a continuation of Cthulhu and Cliff Burton's love of Lovecraft and turning me onto that.
The subject matter is of a great old godlike kind of being that generally does all harm, thus the title. I mean, you know, if someone was to come across something like that, they would feel that that should not happen, should not be. It's sort of showing that we can do things that from a musical point of view are quite simple, but works really well as an overall song, as opposed to some of the other songs on the album, where you don't have to go through a lot of time changes. There's not a lot of what you would say from a musicianship point of view, you know, brilliantness, and it's very basic in the playing kind of thing. You don't have to show everyone that you can do more than you're actually doing, where less works more. Welcome Home, parentheses, Sanitarium. It's a bit like the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest situation with Jack Nicholson. It's basically about a person who is in a sanitarium, and he feels from his point of view that he is sane and shouldn't be there. He's locked up in this cage with all these other mentally sick people. You know, there's going to be the people out there that hear a slow song, and they're instantly going to say, oh, now you're slow, you're gone. That's because, you know, all they're interested in is, you know, 300 miles an hour, and that's all they want to hear. But, I mean, that's not what we're into. We're into fucking Metallica. We're going to do what we want. It happens to be thrash. That's what it is. It happens to, you know, be a slower tune. That's the breaks.
There's a lot of thought put into the arrangement. They're very complicated and well structured, whereas a lot of bands simply say 1, 2, 3, go, and just play real fast and heavy, and we're doing more than just doing that.
It's more fun when we write the stuff to try and surprise ourselves and surprise the people listening with trying to change the moods and the feels of the song. For instance, if you have like a sort of nice, soft, classical piece before you do something really heavy, then the heavy, fast stuff will seem even more punchy and more powerful.
A lot of these songs are about being scared, of being in situations. What if that was you? At that point, you're done writing about headbanging, you know. Back then, we were all still hanging together, living together, didn't really have our own politics or social commentary. We didn't know which worked best for us and our life and our characters. So we were all kind of just talking about, you know, wow, that would be scary. And the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Jack Nicholson's part, where he's the most sane in that whole place, but he's the identified patient. So, you know, we weren't thinking if it was right or wrong. It's just like, that freaks me out.
As long as it remains within my power to prevent, there will be no blackout of peace in the United States.
Second side, first track, which is Disposable Heroes. That's the first song that was written for this album. It's about certain people, whether it be the government or military leaders, and the people that they rule, which is the soldiers, sort of out in battle, out in the fields, which are fighting for, you know, what are we fighting for?
I can remember for Disposable Heroes asking James where you got the concept for that. And he heard a football announcer say it during the game. You know, he said, oh, they're just a bunch of disposable heroes. They have their career and then they get all busted up and then they're just like, you know, they're thrown away. They're just disposable heroes.
There was definitely specific things in each song that were inspired by certain things. Like Disposable Heroes wasn't specifically a young kid in the army being told what to do and, okay, he's dead next. You know, it was these old football players. Your body is destroyed after we've thrown you back in after how many concussions or, you know, just shot you up with something and just go. But yeah, taking that and combining it with this poster that my brother had in our room. I remember it was a picture of this little kid, and I thought it was me because it looked like me. It was a little blonde kid with an army helmet on in a M16 sitting in a, you know, Arlington cemetery. So that was pretty impactful. So I think that's maybe how those kind of two things came together.
You will do what I say when I say back in the front. You coward, you servant, you blind man.
Back then in the 80s, it was all about range. So instead of concentrating on being the next Jeff Tate or Dio, you know, I could focus a little more on the percussiveness, the attack, and lyrics. You don't have to be a great singer, but if you use your voice as an instrument, it's very potent.
Barking of machine gun fire does nothing to me now. Sounding of the clock that ticks, get used to it somehow.
James, as you know, as the writer of the lyrics, purposely steers away from any sort of political situation, and he doesn't want to be associated with either side. They can be absolutely interpreted it in a political way because of the brilliance of his lyrics and how analogous they are and how deep they're rendered in metaphor. It's really anything that you want to interpret it to be, and that's the beauty of James's lyrics.
Cliff Burton and I, we used to listen to the Ziggy Stardust album a lot on the Ride the Lightning tour. The title, Leper Messiah, is actually in the song Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars.
Lyrically deals with television evangelism. It's probably one of the best words for, TV religion.
I remember not being able to sleep. I would go out and just hang out on the couch at the Metallo Mansion and try and fall asleep. And, late night TV, that was all that was on.
There's this guy pointing his finger at you in the television saying, send me money and you will meet God. And it's very, very fake, at least as far as we're concerned. Me and James have a lot of fun every Sunday night at the house, sitting around watching this, having a good laugh. When you start out a recording studio, a couple of years ago, it was like, wow, you're nervous and all this. And I think all of us have really sort of passed that now. And I think that shows in the playing. It's a lot more aggressive.
We've matured musically, if not any other way, a bit over the past 3 years.
It's like the roots of 3 years ago, just done 3 or 4 years better. We've just expanded what we do. I don't think we've given up on where we came from. I just think we've added a lot more.
As you get into, second and third albums, you kind of develop your own style a little more, and it's definitely apparent now. Certain people are still stuck in the past, and certain people are kind of growing.
I think Master of Puppets signifies for a lot of people, and it does for me as well, the pinnacle of the Cliff Burton era.
It was the culmination of that lineup. For me, it was Cliff Burton's time to really shine.
James and mine outlook was very narrow in the beginning, and so Cliff Burton shows up and starts talking about the Eagles or Simon & Garfunkel or Jethro Tull or Misfits or all this different stuff, and so we went broader and broader in our scope.
He was into some pretty obscure stuff, but a true and total musician. He loved music. He was probably the only one in the band that had studied music properly, going to music classes, studying theory, and he introduced harmony to me.
Cliff was not a fan of headphones, so we had like a pair of really big JBL speakers powered up in the main room, and would stick his bass in another room and he'd jump around in there playing. So you'd see this hair thing jumping up and down in the control room mirror, and he was in there because normally you do drums and bass and then dub guitars. And I went, this is all guitar riff-based music. So if he does the bass first and has a certain feeling, that means that we have to play the guitar riff to that feeling. I went, that's not a good idea. Let's do the guitars first. At first, I was actually kind of frustrated because I wanted it to be like, bass drum, bass type. And I kind of quickly realized that that was not the way he played. So I just let him do it, and he did like 2 or 3 bass tracks, and I'd just take the best bits.
He played me a really super rough version of it one time in the hotel room, but it was just the progression. And I remember just hearing that, and then I remember hearing it like X months later, and it had all these harmonies and all these melodies on it, and I was just blown away. It had grown from just like this little chord progression to this huge opus. I was blown away.
He was king of that. He always had lots of different ideas that were layered, and because it was bass and distorted, it was a little hard to tell, but it had its own character because it was bass. And he was genius at harmonies and layering and unique phrasings, very classical sounding, not your typical rock stuff at all. And he'd always push it one extra little something, and that's what was so unique about him. And he was a real musician, and I'm pretty surprised that he didn't play guitar. I mean, he obviously played guitar, but didn't choose guitar.
Towards the last 4 or 6 months, we had a white Les Paul that he traveled with. We would play guitar, and he would take solos. And, his guitar solos were a lot like his bass solos.
The music it's pretty intricate now and then. We're not trying to be something big and fancy, it's just us doing what we do. If they consider that selling out, then whatever.
I remember Cliff playing me the opening to Damage Incorporated because he had recorded it previously and had it on a cassette and played it for me. And then he said, "What do you think?" I go, "It's great." And then he played me the Bach piece that it was based on. And he said, "So what do you think? Does it sound similar or what?" And I said, "I think you're okay, bro. I hear similarities there in the modulations, but your thing is completely different from old JS's thing." Because he thought, maybe the classical music police would come after him or something. I don't know. But he was really concerned about whether that the intro to Damage was too similar to the Bach piece.
The studio thing is the labor of it. And when we get on stage, that's kind of a reward for us because we have a lot of fun.
just about going out there and playing the song and starting to thrash out on stage and like the audience thrashing out with you. It's like a mutual thing between the audience and the band.
Touring, wrecking shit and leaving.
We had this goal and everybody agreed on that and everybody worked really hard to get there. I get really proud. I think we did a really good job back then. I felt it was really effortless to do it, and I think most of the songs still hold up today.
Metallica was a completely different band from what I was used to work with, but it was damn well interesting. At the time, coming from Dokken and White Lion and that kind of stuff, the music to me was the heaviest I've ever heard. Everything was right, you know, and everybody that liked that kind of music all of a sudden was like completely floored. It was a great record, but I'm not sure if any of us knew how big this record's going to be.
It wasn't until we finished the album that we thought, wow, this is like turned out better than any of us thought it would.
The timeline at that point in our career in the 80s was just to get back on the road as quick as possible. There was nothing holding us back on a domestic front. We just lived to be on the road. So in 86, when we were given the chance to play in arenas for the first time in America, that was the ultimate. Playing with Ozzy, playing all over the Midwest, I mean, it was insane.
Are you guys here to see Ozzy or Metallica? Metallica! How come?
Because they're fucking better.
We were going to play to 10, 15, 20,000 people a night, and we were going to introduce this kind of music to a new audience. And that was a really exciting time.
Tell us how long the tour is going to be going for.
Well, we're with Ozzy in the States till late May. He does 2 weeks in Japan. We do some headline stuff around Texas, and then hook up with him again when he comes back. Go on till, I think, August, and then Europe after that.
As we have learned, Cliff Burton of Metallica died early this Saturday morning in a tragic auto accident. The tour bus of Metallica going off the road during their tour in Sweden.
What happened that night was that the driver supposedly hit a patch of ice and the bus skidded. It shattered the windows and Cliff got thrown out of the bus and the bus landed on top of him. I heard everyone screaming, but I didn't hear Cliff, and I instantly knew something was wrong because I didn't hear him. And I got out of the top of the bus because there's an emergency hatch at the very top of the bus. And I turned around and there was Cliff. Everyone was screaming and crying, and I just said, oh my God.
There's only one light beer, Miller Lite.
Hi, we are,
MTV Music News.
Metallica didn't get to the top of the speed metal scrap heap by feeling sorry for themselves. This past September, when their bassist Cliff Burton was killed in a bus accident, they got themselves back on the road in just 6 weeks.
I don't think there was any doubt that we had to carry on and we're going to carry on. We just wanted to get back on the road and get back to doing, what we do.
We have to keep on going. We have to work because it wouldn't be fair to Cliff to just stop. I don't know, it's the way he would have felt. He would have wanted us to go on.
Master Puppets seemed to be kind of the culmination of the journey that had started 4 or 5 years before, with James and I getting together, writing some songs, Kurt and Cliff joining at separate times, and that lineup kind of settling.
I really feel that a lot of the music on Master Puppets, we really had to pull it out of a deep place, A lot of it's just so emotional, from the music to lyrics to, the guitar solos to even the arrangements, It's so dramatic.
It was still rebellious. Back then, it was just still the four of us.
There wasn't anything like Master of Puppets before it. There was no precedent for an album like that. From the moment it was released, it never went away, and still has not. And doesn't show any signs of it going away at all.
Ha 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 ha!